Hi, I'm doing a series of videos based off some blog posts that I've written recently about LangChain, specifically LangChain for JavaScript. And so let's just go ahead and take a look. And so this is the second part of a multi-part series of posts I'm doing on how to use LangChain with JavaScript. One of the things that's nice about LangChain is that right out of the box it supports Python if you're used to writing things in Python. But if you want to use JavaScript, they also have a version of the framework for JavaScript. So in the last video, we talked very quickly about how you could essentially, create a connection to an existing large language model, ask it questions, get a response back. Today, I want to do something a little bit different. I actually want to show you how you can use some of your own data and pass that into a context as you are asking questions of the large language model. So let's take a quick look and see what that actually looks like. So if we look over here, I have an example of a script that I've written. And if we look at this, this is not all that dissimilar from a previous script that I showed in my last video, where I was able to create essentially a chat OpenAI model and send a prompt, pipe that into the model and get a response back. But what I wanted to do today was a little bit different. I wanted to actually take some data from my blog and actually make that available to the essentially to the large language model. And the way you do that is actually pretty simple. So if we take a look right here, I'm just using a regular Node.js based file service object to get a promise back that reads in a file. So if you look at this, we're reading this file, and I have an example here, which is from one of my blog posts, and I'm just importing it in with UTF-8 using the sync and await syntax. So once we have that, I'm actually using something called a recursive TextSplitter. And what's really neat about LangChain is they have all these document loaders and text splitters built into the framework. And why that's important is because when you're actually taking, let's say you have a PDF file, as an example, which may have 500 pages worth of data, what these text splitters will do is they'll actually take the document and break it up into more manageable chunks. And if we take a look at this specific text splitter right here, we'll see that it actually has two different parameters that are being passed in. One's called chunk size and one's called chunk overlap. And essentially what that's doing here is that it's saying I want to set a chunk size of about 500 characters. And then what it's doing is it's setting up an overlap. So as it's going through the document and actually splitting the document up, it's going to have an overlap in there. And that's important because when you're trying to retrieve some of these documents that you want to be able to use to pass in some context into the large language model, if you cut a sentence off halfway in the middle, it's possible that you lose some of that context. And so what the text splitting lets us do is set up this overlap so that if we're going through and maybe it's covering a couple different sections, we can actually pull out those specific documents and send that into the large language model. So once we have that split up here, I'm actually coming through here and I'm creating a variable here called doc output, which is basically just a split of all these different documents. And so it's creating an array of objects that follow a specific format, that have a copy of the text in there, but they can also include meta information about the documents as well. And on top of that, I'm actually using something here called a store retriever. And so there's a specific object that you can use inside of LangChain where you can essentially take your documents and you can store them, and so you can later be able to recall them. And so this is very common if you're building what's called RAG applications. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And so if we look at this, I'm using something that's just called the HNSW lib. And ideally, what you'd probably want to do is use some type of vector database. And so there's a bunch of different vector databases out there where you can take your documents and store them in there. But I'm just using this library here that we can use locally on our machine. But in an enterprise system, you'd probably want to use something that's a little bit more robust than this. Now that we've done that, and I've created my vector store, I'm doing a similarity search on that vector store. So I'm looking up something that has to do specifically with the tech hiring process, and it's going to get back this result. And so in the result, it's going to return back an array, but each item in that array is going to have something called a page content. And that page content is actually the physical text that was used, that was split up with our document splitter. So now that I've done that, I can essentially come in here, I can create a new prompt, which is very similar to the prompt I did in my last post. But the one thing that's different here is that I've added in this variable here called blog context. And so what I'm doing here is I'm asking a question to the large language model, but then here 2 lines down, I'm passing in a blog context so that the model will know, oh, there's some extra information here that I can base my answer on. So it'll take this blog context and use that to essentially create a summary. And then everything else here is pretty much standard. Like from my previous example, I'm creating a chat OpenAI model. And then I'm creating a chain where I'm passing that prompt into the model. And then I'm using our output parser here to get the results. And the output parser, I'm just using that essentially to get a stream back that we can then use to output the results. So here I'm creating the stream, and then you can see here in this object I'm passing in the blog context. The blog context is essentially from that search that we did earlier. So I have my output text here. I'm coming in here and I'm getting a result, and then I'm creating this blog section variable based off of the page content from the first result. So this example is pretty simple. I'm just using one item from the results that return, and in the similarity search I have it set up here so that it's only returning one result anyways. And now that I have that, I'm passing that in for my stream. I get a stream and then I chunk that out. So if we come here and we run this, I can say node hnsw lib and retriever.js. If I go and run that, it's going to take that data, pass it into the large language model, and then it's going to stream out a result. So hopefully that shows you how easy it is to take some data and then store that, and then later retrieve that, and then pass that into a large language model and get results back. This is a very common use case when you're using a framework like LangChain and working with large language models. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you can give it a thumbs down, but I prefer you to give it a thumbs up. That helps the algorithm. And subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more content like this. Have a nice evening.